Hi, my name is David Bayes with Cavalier Associates, and today we're diving into one of the most anticipated new products in the IUL world. It's North American's Secure Horizon IUL, and you may recognize this from their Secure Horizon on the annuity side. Well, Nexus and North American have went ahead and they've taken that and transferred it over into the life side. And joining me today is John Elder. John is one of the key minds behind this product, and he's going to help us unpack what makes this product unique, where it fits in the competitive landscape, and really ask the hard questions about whether it really drives, what it's claiming to do. So, John, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, David. And so, on behalf of Nexus, we appreciate the partnership and just looking forward to getting this message out as quick as we can to the general public. And remember, it's a proprietary product too. So, because of our relationship with Cavalier and Associates, you're one of, if you're listening, if you're a producer, you're one of 95%. Okay, you're one of the 5% that have access to this product. 95% of the advisors out there don't have access to our products.
We definitely appreciate that relationship, and it's gone great so far. But before we, jump in and get technical, let's look at the bigger picture here, John. So, what problem were a Nexus and North American looking to solve in creating this new product?
Well, I think in the marketplace as a whole, I think what we're trying to accomplish here was give the advisors out there that either they've struggled in the past of trying to find the right fit for their clients for cash accumulation, because this is a cash accumulation play first and foremost, but just trying to give additional choices to their clients, right? Not necessarily just cash accumulation. You want cash accumulation. There's so many other benefits of this product that we'll dive into here in a minute, but I think that's just it. Trying to provide more choices for the client, the overall end user.
Right. And the Nexus is known for creating, really unique, interesting, some might even say complex indexing strategies. So at the 30,000 foot level, put this product in simple terms for us and really, who it's designed for.
Yeah, I think it's designed for that person that wants simplicity. I mean, yes, there's a lot of moving parts, but from a 30,000 foot view, if you look at the product, you've got things that you want inside of an IUL. You've got uncapped earning potential. You've got great guarantees that don't go below 100% with these different options. You have 5 different S&P 500 options, David, that you've never seen inside of an IUL, right? Usually there's 2. There's a cap and an uncapped offering, typically, maybe 3 options, but we got 5 options. So 11 total. But what we'll do in a little bit, we'll break that down and help you navigate through that. How do you choose those different indexes? How do you choose the allocation options for those clients? And we've got a partnership with a company that'll help explain that as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that relationship with the index standard, for those that don't know, and we are going to dive into that in a little bit here. But that relationship it really does help kind of part the clouds, right? And alleviate some of that, like, well, what do I choose strategy? Because you do see a lot of, index universal life products, and they have all these different strategies attached to them. There's 4, 5, 6, 7 different account options. And the carrier looks like they kind of just like threw a bunch of stuff against the wall, but then provides no education,
Yeah.
no direction in how to choose. I mean, Allianz has a cool little tool, and hats off to them for really kind of being the only one that does that.
Yeah, right. And what you're going to start seeing, you're going to start seeing, like if you would call David and ask for an illustration, or myself, you're going to start seeing those type of index standard blends, right? Blends for the most optimal performance to meet or achieve that illustration rate. That's what we're trying to achieve. And just for the record, so index standard, we'll just hop right into that. It's a rules-based methodology for forecasting over the next 10 years. How do we meet or achieve that illustration rate? That's what it's looking at. And our friend Lawrence Black at Index Standards figure that out. And just remember, this is a paid subscription too. So the exclusivity with Cavalier and Associates, and you having access to this, really helps drive that narrative and have access to key tools like the Index Standard.
Yeah, it's been a great tool, especially for clients who are a little bit more, like engaged in the process of how do I choose.
Yeah.
It's been something that we've been able to share. Obviously working with the advisor and sharing that with the client, and saying, hey, look, based upon kind of your personality and what you're looking for, we're able to provide that guidance in how to choose those allocations.
Right. Yep. Spot on.
Well, John, every IUL product carrier, claims to be different. But it's really structure and strategy that is really kind of where it starts to set them apart. So let's break that down for Secure Horizon. This product introduces some new design elements. Can you walk us through the structure of the accumulation engine and the role of the indices at a high level?
Yeah, so I'm in a 30,000 foot view. Just the actual chassis that this product's on is the same as the Builder Plus 4, if you're familiar with North American, same chassis. But what we've done is we've kind of moved some things around to give the client a little more value. It's kind of like a souped up engine, right? You can buy the base model of a car, or you can buy that super focused on performance engine car, like a Shelby Mustang compared to a base quad, 4 cylinder, whatever that looks like. So what we did is we added a couple indexes in here that are proprietary to this product and to a Nexus. We've added a domestic option in the S&P Prism, and many of you that know who a Nexus is that have been around, it's the number one performing smart beta or volatility control daily rebalancing index. It's been the number one index in the market, the IUL market, since 2018, February 2018. And then what we've done is we get 1, 2, and 3 year options there, so you can have that kind of laddering approach, right? Not sticking all your eggs in one basket to get constant performance inside the contract. And by having that 2 and 3 year option in there, just for the record too, the longer duration options tend to provide more value for the client if the advisor and client, agree on, hey, we have time to let this thing cook, right? If we have time to let this policy cook. Otherwise, your 1 year options are fine, and there's plenty of them. So there's 1, 2, and 3 year options domestically. Then we have the global offering in the RAFI index called the Research Affiliates. That's our friend Rob Arnott, which, by the way, holds the first patent for a volatility controlled index. So it's kind of cool that we have a global offering with the Research Affiliates, or the RAFI. And then we have the S&P Prism that my good friend, and Dave, you know him as well, Tom Haynes, that he designed that at a Nexus in 2017. He says from his kitchen table. So the buck kind of stops with him. There's a reason why it's been number one, right? He wants this thing to last. Same with Robert Arnott, right? The Research Affiliates. If you're going to have par rates on 1, 2, and 3 year options, the 3 year options as high as 410%. That's how we're offering it right now. Now, typically, when we get into a space too, we don't want to do Tom calls it a come on rate, right? We're not going to show you this big rate and all of a sudden some type of trade war or something happens, just moving forward, and all of a sudden we're dropping par rates. Things are happening. All these levers are getting pulled by the carrier. That's not the case here. We've got to we project these par rates when we launch these products at a 10-year frequency. So we're looking 10 years out, much like the index standard does when it's suggesting certain allocation options and blends for most optimal performance. We're looking at 10 years out when we're setting these par rates because we don't want those things to move. That's not a feel good for a client or an advisor, if you're listening, when you have to explain to your client why this dropped. Okay, this one dropped, but this one didn't. Well, give it time. This one will. It's a game all around there. So we try to set these things somewhere in the middle when we know we're not going to have to drop it, but we have the potential to raise it in the client's favor. And then also with those 6 options for the RAFI and the Prism, so you got global and domestic, those are all uncapped. That's another thing we do with our designs at a Nexus. We're all about the uncapped earning potential. We don't want to take away from the client. And remember, with this product too, Dave, there's no asset-based charges, fees, or spreads with those 6 options. It's uncapped with very high par rates. And as I said before too, all your 1 year options guaranteed at 100, 2 year options are guaranteed at 125, and 3 years are all guaranteed at 150. 6 options like that, solid for blending. Then you move into the S&P 500. What I'm excited about, first, never been seen before, dual trigger option inside of an IUL, meaning on a 1 year point-to-point basis for the S&P 500. If the product does 0 in the S&P 500, if the index does 0 or greater, clients getting an 8% rate of return. It's not a cap. It's just, that's what it is. We priced it so the client can get an 8, even if the market is at 0. Even if the S&P does 20, the client's still getting an 8. So great opportunity to blend here as well. The dual part of that is if it does anything negative, down to -10, client's getting a +2. Up, down, and flat markets. You've heard it before on the Nexus products that we have. Up, down, and flat markets. We want your client to participate in gains. So they're getting a +2 if it goes down to -10. Now, if it goes -11, clients are going to get a 0. So the research has been done, 30 years now of research that we've done with the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is down -10 or greater 86% of the time, meaning 14% of the time your client would have got a zero, which is solid, right? That's solid, a solid offering.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's a couple points there. One is Tom Haynes is no joke. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with him. Guy's an absolute genius. I actually know some advisors who like know him personally,
Right.
that I ran into, somebody back east, and he was like, "No, that guy's like he's a savant when it comes to
Wicked,
index
wicked,
strategy."
wicked smart, wicked smart. He's from the East Coast. He's wicked
Yeah,
smart.
wicked smart's a way to put it for sure.
Yeah.
That's the Boston comes out. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely impressive that way. In a couple pieces there that you mentioned, one being when you talk about guaranteed participation rates, that's one thing you see get adjusted or has the ability to get adjusted. That's one of the many dials that exist out there for carriers to adjust. It's not just the caps. A lot of people talk about cap movement. Very few talk about par movement. They're less likely to move than a cap,
Right.
but it's a dial for a reason. Like if the
Right.
carrier wasn't putting a tool in their back pocket to make adjustments, then they wouldn't have done it. You've partnered with carriers that are willing to say, no, we are going to guarantee higher par rates, whether it's North American, Nationwide, Securian, or Hancock. And you can, one of those companies is an ESOP, two are mutual, and one is really a protection-based system. It's actually not an accumulation-based system. So
Right.
it's when you start looking at that spread of carriers, you start to understand kind of why a Nexus chooses these partnerships. And,
Right.
and I had done that with, went through that with JT in a previous video.
Yep.
But the other piece to this too is if you go and you run the market and you look at all of the carriers across the board on a spreadsheet and you just compare cash value, a Nexus isn't really interested in that story. They're really more interested in, can we deliver base hit after base hit and then a double, maybe a triple, maybe a home run, but can we deliver that base hit and double over and over again? So that's about as much smoke as I'm going to blow in that direction.
Yeah.
But it is true, and so if it is something where, hey, I'm just going to go off the spreadsheet, well, you're never going to write in the Nexus product
That's
because
it.
it doesn't do that, and that's not the market you want to play in anyways. So that makes sense, and that's interesting. And the last piece I'll hit on is you and I were at a conference together with Bobby Samuelson talking
Yep.
about index UL performance and cap adjustments, and looking at some of those carriers that had made cap adjustments, and how we really need to even start looking at replacing some of the 10, 12, 15-year-old index products that are out there, whether they be with Accordia or Pac Life, who we've seen make some substantial, significant cap adjustments in there. So those are just some comments on that. But all of this actually boils down to kind of the next piece, which is I sit down face to face. I'm online a lot. I'm on LinkedIn a lot with advisors from all different walks of life, and there is a growing concern around the complexity of index universal life products. This happened in the index annuity world. It's now happening in the index life world. It's just they're becoming, are they becoming overly complex, or are they actually delivering value for the client? So when you sit down with an advisor, which you do regularly, I've introduced quite a few to you, but when you sit down with an advisor, how do you coach them to understand this significant number of investment allocation options across 4 different products or 3 different products when you're thinking from an accumulation standpoint? How do you coach them in order for them to really coach the client?
Yeah, I think it's real simple. I think you start off by just giving the advisors and whoever's listening, you give them bullet points, right? You give them the things that matter. Like when you tell me that I can sell to my client uncapped earning potential with strong guarantees, keep in mind it's cash accumulation, uncapped earning, strong guarantees, and you've got options that are so many choices inside here. But then you're like, well, how do you navigate through that, right? How do you navigate through these choices? Well, it's simple. What goal are we trying to accomplish? Right? Advisors, they all have the clients out there. They're not looking for IUL. They're using IUL as a tool, right? Advisors looking for IUL as a tool for cash accumulation. So depending on what that problem is, like even with this product, we haven't even touched on the other benefit here that's never been seen before. It's called the secure stage endorsement benefit. We'll discuss that here in a second. But when you look at it from a 30,000 foot view, what is the Nexus doing to help educate out there? And that's kind of where we come into play and hop on the phone. Help the advisors, help you all listening, help you develop a story to tell your client, because client doesn't care what the front end loads are. They don't care, back end, whatever. They don't care about any of that stuff. They want to know, hey, is this positioned to work and solve my problem? And that's where we come into play and give. I give, David, you've seen this from me. I give 4 or 5 bullet
Mhm.
points for each product and index that we have that makes sense. And advisors, they gravitate towards that. They like the bullet points, the Cliff Note version, right? Go back to college, the Cliff Note version of everything that we have. Just kind of reduce it. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to go through a specimen contract and say, "Oh, this is so convoluted. There's so much going on here. I can't understand this." Well, that's kind of where we brought in the index standard too. You don't have to understand it. You just got to understand the market, what's going on in the market, and then you look at the index standard and say, "Hey, this makes sense." Now that I understand
Mhm.
this index, it makes sense why the positioning on that graph. It's telling you what the best, possible, most optimal performance looks like as far as diversification options with the allocations. So there's a lot going on there.
And let me ask you this. I mean, is there a consumer, is there a client demographic that this product is maybe more fitted towards or more suited for?
I would say not necessarily. I mean, I get that question a lot with all the Nexus products. Like if you have somebody who wants cash accumulation and wants choices inside this of a contract, this
Hmm.
is it. I mean, there is there. I mean, Nationwide's got it. Securion's got their different niches that they have and things that people gravitate towards. But this provides so many choices. It answers so many questions about the current market conditions in the economy, what's going on with your dual trigger options. I mean, 5 S&P options, 1 year cap, 1 year uncapped, spread, no spread, capped option at 10.5, and then you got the dual trigger and the single trigger options that I didn't mention the single trigger, but 5 S&P options, 6 volatility control with domestic, global, uncapped, strong guarantees. You just keep it small like that. You don't need to sell the rest because you're not looking at the illustration saying, "Hey, this looks the best." You should never do that anyway, right? We always talk about that. We know that we've got to be competitive in that because we won't even get a look if we're not competitive.
Hmm.
However, we are in that top 3, 4 range every time we run these illustrations with North American as far as income goes. And that's why that's why this product really exists, is for those people looking for cash accumulation. And for those demographics, usually, some folks like to concentrate on that, pre-retirement, post-retirement in that range, 55, 65, whatever, right? Or 60, 55, whatever range. That's not necessarily true. I mean, these products can work with anyone. I mean, you can issue a contract with this product age 15, or sorry, 15 days old, not year,
Right.
15 days old to age 75. And
Hmm.
there's a reason why it's 15 days old to 75, because we've seen it work both ends of the spectrum based on how that chassis is built. And kudos to North American for originally designing that chassis, right? I mean, they've got a great product in the Builder Plus 4. This just provides more options for the client with the Secure Horizon IUL.
Yeah, I think when you start, getting pretty, let's call it further north from an age standpoint, over 50, over 55, even up into 70, it's actually interesting. You can't just plug in the numbers and run them and expect the structure to look right because it
Right.
won't. The products aren't designed for that. But depending on the specific needs that the client's looking to achieve there, maybe it's a liquidity concern. Hey, I want this growth, but I want 100% access to it. Can we attach an early cash value rider for this? I don't want to lock it away. There do start to pop up some opportunities for their north market. That said, obviously, the majority of these sales are going to kind of be south of 50, right? And
Yeah.
and that would make up a huge brunt of the accumulation space, from a
Sure.
generalized Canadian standpoint. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When you think about, there's and the other piece I want to talk on too is, or just mention is the trigger method. That is, if you're familiar, if you're an advisor who is familiar with buffered strategies
Yeah.
on variable annuities, that is the buffered strategy in the index universal life world. We are starting to see those happen more and more. We've seen it on a VUL with Prudential. I believe it's on a VUL with Lincoln too, or Protective, one of the two. But Prudence is pretty popular. They kind of built a whole new product around that. But yeah, we are starting to see more of those buffered strategies, I would call them, versus maybe, I'm going to say traditional lock strategy, even though it's really not that old, would be like Allianz's, more, hey, call in and
Sure.
lock it, or, set a lock ahead of time. And when it hits, it hits.
Sure.
Yours is really not that. It's really more of a buffered strategy. So I
Yep.
did want to point that out.
Yep.
Now,
Good point.
One of the things you talk about, or one of the, if we kind of start to strip back some of the accumulation piece on this, is you do have multipliers and enhancements that are tied to persistency bonuses, or to persistencies. You know, critics might say that that's just a way to handcuff policyholders. What's your response to that?
I'd like to say that we don't have a lot of non-guaranteed action inside of our contracts, right? I mean, we never played that game when AG 49B or squared or whatever you want to call it, the second version came out. We didn't have to refile our products like every other carrier did that had bonus structures inside there that were not guaranteed, making the illustrations look really good. I mean, some of these carriers were putting bonuses in year one and non-guaranteed bonuses in the account value, just killing it on the spreadsheet. So guess what was getting
Mm-hmm.
sold? Guess what was getting sold? Non-guaranteed bonuses in the
Right.
illustrations, right? I mean, it's just a fact. No right or wrong there, right? Because we all have to rely on the market and what it's going to do. However, right, for the most consistent performance, we get those bonuses out of there. We do have, persistency bonuses on other contracts and different things. With this one here, we did take that bonus that the BP4 had in it, right? The guaranteed bonus. We took that out, but we
Oh,
also
okay.
leveraged that with our options budget, right? We took that and we made the guarantees no lower than 100%. We gave uncapped earning potential. We also have that secure stage benefit that we're going to talk about here shortly. So there's other things that you can do with those dollars besides give bonuses for better potential, better chance for performance inside the contract, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be a little more aggressive or assertive on the persistency bonuses out there, and some of the carriers that really led forward with that. ING, no longer in the business. Pac Life obviously has had adjustment on their caps with
Sure.
regards to some of that initial accelerator product. So we've seen that across a number of other carriers that kind of
Sure.
experimented in that world, and I think um, have adjusted since to maybe at least begin to follow kind of the ethic behind
Yeah.
AG 49B, right? So
Yeah.
there's the rule of AG 49, and then there's the spirit of the rule of
Sure.
AG 49. And some carriers have decided to adhere to that spirit of the rule, and some prefer to try to look like a hedge fund, which I think is kind of interesting. So, and then before we
Sure.
move on, from the complexity standpoint, it's interesting because I'll get individuals who manage money. Now they're not day trading, right? They're not managing their own portfolio. But if you can adequately explain algorithmic trading or kind of third party investment management services that many financial advisors utilize these days,
Yeah.
this is way easier than that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think what they do is confusing, right? So you look at it from, I mean, that's just like a lot of the firms we work with. You have annuities in life, right? Annuity folks thinks life hard, and annuities they're not that hard, but they do get a little complex.
I was going to say they're pretty simple.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I want to say that, but I mean, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And you think about it in the industry, life insurance, the ones that don't typically embrace it are just the ones that don't understand it because they do their due diligence. They want to understand something 100% before they dive in, typically, right? Typically, that's what somebody does. But I mean, if you look at, and this is no bag on CPAs or attorneys, but the first one to shut down an IUL policy would be a CPA just because they don't understand it. For sure. I mean, and once they understand it, embrace it though, it's a great option. It's not the option for everybody, an IUL, but it is a good tool for cash accumulation. And if it's done right, tax favored benefits, taking out the money, tax favored, can't say tax free, you say tax favored, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are a great benefit for these IULs as long as somebody understands them. And I think we're getting more and more traction. I love what Anexus is doing from the standpoint of design. We're the largest purchaser of smart beta options on Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
We negotiate our own option costs. We do all that. I think what it does, it sets the standard in the industry for design that's really for the client. And I think a lot of the other carriers are starting to adhere to that. You're starting to see more and more carriers come out with better products. Not that their products weren't good, but they're just getting better for the end consumer. And I think that's a tribute to what Anexus and the leadership there has done as far as design.
I think we could spend a lot of time talking about, from a technical standpoint and kind
Sure.
of unbolting everything. And if somebody wants to dive in deeper than we have today, then obviously,
Absolutely.
you're more than available to jump in and have those phone calls. I know I've done a lot of joint phone calls with CPAs
Yep.
to help them actually understand it,
Yeah.
and haven't failed at doing that yet. I mean, it
Yeah.
truly is an understanding of it. And look, there's a lot of misinformation around like, is this tax free? It's like, no, it's tax advantageous,
Right.
but tax free would be a very inaccurate statement, and I suggest you buy a little bit more E&O if that's the terminology you'd like to
Language,
be
right?
directed.
If that's a language you're going to use, yes, yes, right,
Yeah, yeah. I strongly suggest against doing that and
right,
staying out of the line of fire.
right.
At the very least,
Amen.
nobody wants to go to court. So,
Right,
so that said, okay, perfect. So look, John, we broke apart the innovation that exists um, within an Nexus and specifically within Secure Horizon. Let's talk about where this fits actually in the marketplace. So, Secure Horizon IUL, you know, what's it designed to go head to head with out there? There's a lot of IUL products, so I'm not going to say like this isn't designed to go head to head with Omaha, who's
right.
just really an S&P carrier. But
Sure.
but where does this hunt? For that, if you're the advisor that writes this carrier, you're the one who wants to consider Secure Horizon.
Right. I think it starts with, we say it's not a spreadsheet game, but it does spreadsheet well. So we're going to get those looks from folks that we haven't in the past, right? So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have that. I think where, my friend James Hahn says, the jump ball here is that secure stage benefit. It's not the reason why you'd sell the contract. That's not what's going to get the sale, but it's an additional choice that the client's going to have inside their policy to further enhance their experience with the IUL, right? They may buy it for cash accumulation, but nobody knows 20 years from now if it's actually going to be triggered for income. No, there's no way of knowing that, right? There's no way of knowing
Mm-hmm.
that. So I would say that cash accumulation is the first and foremost reason why you'd buy this. It's not the other benefits with the secure stage. However, those are great options to have inside of a contract once it does perform like we say it can, right? So I think it's kind of a segue. We should probably talk about the secure stage benefit.
I
So
was going to say
we
we've
probably
kind
should
of
have,
you've teased that a few times here. So why
yeah.
don't you break in and explain what secure stage is?
Yeah, so bottom line, what the secure stage is it's so in a traditional life insurance contract, you're going to have your account value, surrender value, and death benefit column. The fourth column with North American that you'll see on every illustration, you can't take it off. We can't add it on. It's baked into the contract. It's part of the offering. It is what it is. So you need to know about it if you're writing this policy because
Mm-hmm.
it will hook somebody, but it won't sell it for you based on, just whatever. But with this secure stage, there's going to be 150% multiplier, right? Or you multiply whatever interest and credit has been gained through the lifetime of the contract. Multiply that number by 150%, which is a guaranteed number, by the way. That's how we filed the contract. 150% guaranteed multiplier. And then you add your premium back to it, equals your net longevity risk benefit base, the fourth column that you'll see in every illustration. That is the secured stage benefits. There's three of them. So automatically you think if there's interest and credited, multiply by 150%, then you add the total amount of premium in the contract, you get this big bucket of money.
Mm-hmm.
That is the net longevity risk benefit base. And it took me a while to be able to say that smoothly, right? But that is a larger number, should be, because this is a performance based offering, this fourth column. So the policy has to perform. So you can't, you're going to have guaranteed income for life for the client, an option, okay? Then you're going to have something called plan gap, which is in our annuities that we have as well with North American. But that is if Social Security reduces their benefits by 3% or more during that time where clients can take Social Security, you have access to that big pool of money over a 12-year period. Paid out tax favored, right? You're not paying taxes on these monies, 12 years of payments paid out monthly. Incredible, right? So that's the plan gap. Lifetime income, same thing. You're going to be able to trigger at age 60. I believe it's age 60. You're going to have to cut that part out. But you have access to take money, and there's a certain waiting period that you have to have, right? Before you can take lifetime income out. But you're going to be able to take that over the client's lifetime. Well, you're thinking, well, how do they know when I'm going to die, right? Or how do they know when the client's going to, whatever. There's a table that it goes by, and it's by attained age and issue age in the contract, just like the annuities have their table that they look at with guaranteed income. Same type of
Mm-hmm.
table, but it's right in that range. So you've got options there. And then the third benefit in secure stage and this longevity benefit base is for the beneficiary. I like this part because if the client wants to take a lump sum, the beneficiary has that choice upon death. They can take a lump sum death benefit, but it's going to be based on that third column. It's not going to have that enhancement of 150%. That third column, net death benefit. Fourth column should be bigger in almost every scenario we've seen and ran. If the policy performs like we say it will, or like it should, it's going to be bigger. They can take that lump sum over a 5-year period. So you're instantly going to have more money because this is an installment payment of the death benefit rather than a lump sum payment from the carrier. So 3 benefits: lifetime income, plan gap, right? And then also the installment payments of the benefit for the beneficiary of the death benefit.
Hey, so John, those are some really cool benefits. In any one of those scenarios, specifically like the lifetime income piece, does that annuitize the contract, or does it stay a life insurance policy with a running death benefit?
Stays a life insurance contract, but of course it's going to come off dollar for dollar when you're taking the income out. It'll come off dollar for dollar that account value, right? I mean, of course it's going to come out of there, and then of course the death benefit will go down slowly too. It is a life insurance contract. It's considered a loan, David. That's how it's considered tax favored.
Okay, I figured so. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't
Absolutely.
missing
No,
anything.
that's the main
Really
question
unique
we get.
structure.
Yeah, we get that question almost every time we present.
Okay. One of the things that I typically focus on is internal cost structure. How does this one compare to some of the other leading IULs when you compare them from an internal cost?
Well, it's right in line, right? I mean, it's right in line with the costs of the top. You're going to be in the top 5. You're going to be in there as far as low all-in expense in the contract. But remember, when you start adding things, that's when it starts getting expensive. So when you look at it from a standpoint of, well, it's right for the client, agent. You got to find the right mix there too, right? Because you want to make sure that advisors get paid. There's administrative costs and things of that nature, which tend to, go towards cost of insurance, commissions, and all that other stuff that is involved with these contracts. But it's right in line with everything in the marketplace, but he's just provided more choices for the client. That's where you're going to get your sizzle here.
Excellent. Well, look, I mean, this product, as I mentioned with some of the other, a Nexus lineup, they really do, tell an attractive story, right? And but I spend a fair amount of time, like I was saying earlier, in front of a lot of advisors, both a lot of in-person events, which we've had the joy of having you out to,
Yep.
right? And advisors are skeptical, right? And more, we don't have the insurance producer who's kind of leaning into life insurance sales. We have the financial advisor who's comparing this or seeing how this fits into a more generalized portfolio approach, right? Where you have managed money, you have an IUL or a whole life policy, you have some long-term care, right? You kind of think about this in a more diversified portfolio approach. And there's so many products kind of chasing the same direction, and you've talked a lot about the benefits associated with Secure Horizon. You also have a number of other accumulation focused products on this, but from an Nexus standpoint, maybe not so much from a product standpoint, but what's kind of like 1 or 2 lines that you would say this is why you consider a Nexus versus something else?
Well, with the Nexus, it just starts with the overall design, and you don't even have to mention carriers at this point. So if you've dealt with the Nexus, whether it's annuities or life insurance, you know that it all starts with the overall design, with the clients in mind when we're designing these, because we negotiate these option costs, we get real dollars back, we put those dollars back into the contract. You get it, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that make our budget a little bigger, right? With the client in mind. What do clients want to see? I mean, our founder, Ron Schertz, he had a great vision of, hey, let's do something proprietary in the industry that only 5% of the industry has access to. Let's pick and choose who we work with, like David and the folks at Cavalier that have been great partners of ours. And let's go to a marketplace that wants to understand why this is good for the client. Okay? Uncapped earning potential, guarantees. I mean, you got things in there that in the proprietary index options that actually work, right? We're not designing indexes just to put an illustration out there that looks the best, right? We're designing things that have proven itself. When we do our due diligence on these indexes and these designs, my friend Tom Haynes says it all the time. We're not for everybody, but we're the ones that want to do the right thing for the client, for sure. Because we know we put a hand over the heart and say, hey, we're in something here that we're not going to have to apologize to these clients when we're putting them in a Nexus product, whatever carrier it may be, and for whatever the solution. But it's got to be the right solution too, though, right? It's got to be a solution to the problem that we're trying to find. But it's all about the design.
And one thing I see a lot, you see this a lot online, is You have, and look, this is true. Like, there's no argument to this, but you see a lot of these volatility control indexes, and you see them from a number of different insurance companies, and they're back testing. And one of the things we identified really early on with back testing in index universal life, I mean, this goes back a decade, is we started going to the carriers and saying, well, and so this would be pre AG49. There was no rule associated with it.
Yep.
But you kind of these two different issues with back testing is we'd say, hey, what date in the year are you back testing from? Because you're going to have, do you have two sweep dates a month? Some people don't, know about sweep dates or talk about sweep dates. You typically have two sweep dates a month. And then when you think about, hey, what are you back testing to? Like, is it January 1st? Is it January 15th? Is it February 15th? Is it March 1st? Like, because carriers, this is not a difficult computer, process to run as far as like, where's the best time to start. So
Right.
that's one piece to these back testings. But at least with like the S&P 500, when you think about it from a generic allocation option standpoint, like that's an easy one to back test. We can back test that 55 years. There's no problem. What do you say to those who like argue like it's really not safe or appropriate to back test these VCIs when they didn't exist? And so you're kind of, I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe creating data.
Well, so what I like to tell them with that standpoint, because everything that we do now is all forecasting, kind of like index standard forecasting the next 10 years based on the algorithm, like that. Backcasting was originally invented like this. It was supposed to be the actual buying date of every month, backcasted as long as the real components of that index have been around. Okay, so like for instance, the S&P Prism, we'll do the third Friday of the month. We'll backcast, I think all the way back to 1990. We can track the S&P 500, of course, but then you got your GCI, right? You got your commodities, then you got your 10-year Treasury. All those components together would have been around since 1990. So we can go back to 1990 and give you an accurate backcasting of what it would have looked like because those real components were there. And we use the actual buying date when we backcast. That's how it was meant to be. What's happened is it's got a little twisted, and they use the single best buying date of every month, and they've gone back as long as they want to, like you mentioned. Like, what year did you go back to? Like carrier, I mean, carriers, and no pun on carriers, right? But they go back wherever they want. They can stop right before the pandemic. They can stop right before. They're using these numbers just to get a better number, which I don't think is right. But that I will tell them the difference between what we do our due diligence with and how some of them are working in the industry. Well, how did they get their backcast number at 8 and you're only at 5? Well, they cut out the tech bubble, right? Or they cut out something else, or those components weren't even around back then when they went back.
Mhm.
We're using real components, actual buying date, backcasting. But I mean, just to fast forward, we're all about forecasting. We know what these things have done and what they would have done, and that's great if you know how we backcast. But forecasting, we're all about forward thinking. Where can we go with this thing? What has the best potential for the client? Great, it did this. Great, it worked. Well, what's it gonna do? What do we think it can do? And we I know
Yeah,
we lean on our friends in New York too. We lean on the big banks, right? We lean on the financial institutions, and when we're forecasting, and we get a pretty good mix of response back. So
some would say for better or worse.
yeah, for better, yeah, for better or
But
worse.
there is one of the and this is a thing. One trick I've seen some of these carriers do is they increase their S&P cap. So when people run the illustration, like they figured out how to game the illustration software in a way, which is they increase their S&P cap, but then they tell you no, you want to allocate towards this VCI, and it's like, well, it's a kind of a bait and switch if you ask me. And so I've seen that start to happen quite a bit. And I'll see people they run it on the S&P. And I'm looking at the illustration, and then I'm looking at the allocation form, and I'm like,
Yeah, hold on a
these don't
second.
match.
Yeah, they don't match,
And
right?
and not every carrier is going to say, well, we need an illustration to match the allocation form. Some do, but not every single one of them. And
Yeah,
so I think that's something that you got to be really aware of, that if you're having somebody run illustrations for you, make sure that illustration matches the allocations you want, because it will change. Uh, you see this on the accumulation side. You also see it on the protection side. And the problem
right.
is on the protection side, now you're putting the like essentially the livelihood of the policy itself at risk. And
Absolutely.
I've seen that happen a number of occasions.
Well,
And
David, what we've seen, from our standpoint, a lot of the applications that come into the carriers that we'll get wind of and how the monies are allocated, there'll be, what is it, 80 some percent of them come in exactly how the illustration was ran and sent to the advisor with one option in it. And then what
right,
happens? And then you're getting a phone call as a marketing firm there, even at a Nexus, hey, this VCI is not working. Well, what'd you have your money in? Well, we're 100% in this option. Whoa, why? Well, that's how the illustration was ran. So all the defaults typically are one option in there. So that's something to be mindful of too when you're getting an illustration back. Why is it like that? Well, it's like that because that gives it the best foot forward as far as optically, in an illustration. The 1 year holds, right? You're not seeing a lot of 100% 3 years or 100% 2 years because it's not going to look as good. It's the 1 year option, no matter what index it's in or option, whether it's S&P 500 or volatility control. So just be mindful of that when you're looking at the illustrations.
well, and look, when you look at all of these products that exist out there, 30 different products. I'll just go with 30 because that's, let's call it A-rated carriers. You start mixing in some of these other fly-by-nighters, and the number expands even more. Um, but few of them help coach you on actually how to allocate inside of a product. So they say, here's 5, 6, 7, 8 allocation options. Best of luck to you. Have fun with that. You have recently partnered with the index standard. There's a cost for that, as we've talked about. And it's not a cost to the advisor, it's a cost to
Correct.
the Nexus, but it's something that you guys find a lot of value in. How do you utilize index standard, or how does the advisor utilize index standard to help allocate a policy and really communicate that to the consumer?
Right, and I think it's as easy as this. It's as easy as paying attention to where can you find the index standard and this piece that we keep talking about. It's on the MyNexus site. You've got access through David to get this. This is updated on a quarterly basis. So all of the allocation options, 3 year, 2 year, S&P, volatility control, whatever that might be for all the Nexus products is on the MyNexus site under the index tab. You'll find it. But how we utilize that, every quarter, this is updated, right? And I just tell the advisors, man, if you're comfortable with this and knowing that it is a rules-based methodology for forecasting the most optimal blend for performance, and remember, we're just trying to get to the illustration rate. When you see these blends, it's to get to the illustration rate inside of these illustrations. We want to meet or exceed the illustration rate. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not trying to hit a home run. We're just trying to hit that illustration rate. And what, according to these rules, what are we thinking over the next 10 years? Right now, that blend should be to put the client in the best chance to win. And on that MyNexus site, there's a pie chart, right? There's a pie chart for the multi-year blend. Okay, so that could have 3 years, 2 years, S&P, index, whatever. Volatility control could have every option in there, multi-year. There's also a 1 year option you can look at because there's a lot of advisors and a lot of clients that get on the internet and they're index experts and say, I don't want anything more than a 1 year. I want returns every year. So we have 1 year blends for all the 1 year options as part of the offering as well. So you can see that. So we've got the multi-year and the 1 year updated on a quarterly basis. And our friends at Index Standard, we've had great success with this on the annuity side of the house as well at a Nexus.
It's a great tool. I get asked regularly by advisors, well, how would you allocate this? And I'm like, look, I'm not the client. Like, how I do something is different than how they would do something. And
Sure.
I'm not an investment manager. I don't, like, I study these, I digest them, I understand them. But as far as like coaching a client, like, hey, you should choose this or
Sure.
this or that, the other thing, we can educate and then let you make that decision. And that's really what the index standard does, is it gives you that education to
It's a
then
crutch.
deliver that decision.
Yeah, it's a crutch.
And I've used
It's
it.
a crutch. It's a crutch. It's a guide just to look at. It's not the Bible, right? I mean, you don't have to use this, but it's just giving you something to run on instead of, like you said, throwing 6 different options at you. Good luck. And then they end up writing, and then it ends up getting written as a 1 year option because that's how the illustration was ran because they didn't know. And no fault of their own. There's just not a lot of education in the industry, and that's what where we like to come in to say that, hey, we like educating on these different things and giving you more tools to use to make those decisions with your client.
Yeah, you get education on everything except for how to allocate in
Correct.
the index universal life.
That's right. I'll
Every single piece
educate
you
you
can go
where.
and read everything about,
That's
but
it.
carriers just do not want to dive into or hesitate to dive into the actual allocation part of this. And
Absolutely.
really, that's kind of the make or break part of an index universal life policy.
It is.
If you
It
look
is.
at the top, you run any number and you look at a spreadsheet and you compare the top 10, I mean, you're talking about 2 to 5% of difference from one to number 10 as far as cash value in 20 years, it's which one's actually going to get you there or
Right.
is most likely to get you there, that has a higher probability of getting you there. And we've even seen carriers kind of drop off from that like percentile story they used
Yeah.
to tell a lot.
Yeah. And
That one is on the way to dodo.
if you look at all the different indexes that we have at Annexus, we've got, I believe it was 4 of the top 10 as far as inside of index ULs. I mean, there's like 200 and some VCIs now that are out there, right? I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Crazy.
But when we look at, if you would have had the right blend with our different products, it's positive across the board, because between S&P, the caps, the uncapped, your volatility control indexes, if you've got the right blend in there and done your homework, and this is what the index standards for, is to give you some type of gauge to run on to put you in that position where you get the best chance for success in the performance.
Well, look, John, I really appreciate you fielding all these questions today. Let's bring it home with one last question here is we have covered a lot of information today. And we can spend more time with any group of advisors or any individual advisor if they want to dive into this, and we can pair them up with you, step
Yep.
away and let you do all the education on this. But if there is one takeaway from this conversation that you don't want an advisor to overlook when considering secure Horizon IUL, what would that be?
I would say that one of the main things that get lost in translation every time we present, or when James Hahn or JT Bell or whoever, any of us, Al Superman, any of us are presenting, is the fact that our indexes, they're uncapped. All right, we get that question a lot. They don't remember that it's uncapped, or is that uncapped? Yeah, that's uncapped. All of our index options in these VCIs, they're uncapped. Volatility control indexes, uncapped, and great guarantees. They forget the fact that we have guarantees that don't go below 100% as far as participation rates. That's a big deal too. That's a peace of mind sale, taking that emotional roller coaster away for the clients, giving them peace of mind that, even in bad times, the lowest this thing could go is 100 or 125 or 150. And oh, by the way, that's uncapped, right? So we're all of the gain in the contract plus that par rate. So I would say uncapped and the guarantees, it's all about the design, all about the design of the contract.
Well, John, I really appreciate you for spending the time with us today, really diving into this new product on the IUL side. Obviously, if you're utilizing this product on the annuity side, this might be actually your nice, easy way into the index universal life world, because I know broker dealers, FMOs that write a ton of the Secure Horizon product. I know advisors that are really big fans of it. So if you haven't stepped into the IUL world, or you're writing that product and you're looking at, hey, can I get something like this in the IUL world? It is now here. It's deliverable, and it's ready to utilize. So, and it's got some great guides aligned with it. So, and last but not least, a really strong carrier. So,
Yep.
look, if you're looking for something, different, something unique, and something with guaranteed income, I would say being the one biggest piece here. This might be a product that you want to consider as an advisor, as an insurance producer for your clients. So, with that said, John, thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I would say that we're probably going to do some more videos on the other products
Yep.
and do the same deep dive. So be on the lookout for those coming down the pipeline.
Great. Thanks, David. Take care.